Good morning. Here we are again, episode 10 of the Legal and General Just podcast, where we talk to advisors about their views and opinions in the intermediary space. And today is a really exciting one because it's the first episode post Consumer Duty.
Thanks, Wayne. And today we're joined by Nathan Ansell, who is founder of Hend Consulting. So welcome, Nathan. Thanks for coming on. And Nathan is a specialist in business protection. So if you're an advisor looking to get into that space or learn more, then this episode will be for you. So yeah, Nathan, tell us a bit about how Hend Consulting came to be.
So yeah, I've worked in the industry about 13 years now, working for a couple of brokerages when I first started in the industry and learning along the way as it goes, really. And then got into business protection really from the last place that I worked for, which was very much specialist in business mortgages, business lending, business protection. And I was their protection advisor. So I kind of learned everything from there, built up with them, and then decided to branch through myself in May 2019 and set up ever since, and just slowly but surely growing. But yeah, it's certainly prefer it this way, working for myself.
Nice. And what was it that attracted you to that business protection space? What did you enjoy loads about it from your previous role?
It's more, I would say, the conversation and how they flow with people, because it's more advice they're looking for than to try and save pennies, I would say, from the personal space. So the business line of protection was always my focus, really, for what I wanted to do. The conversations are smooth, they're not rushed. No one's in a desperate hurry to set up cover. They all want the proper advice, really have a good think about it, and then go away from there and come back to you. It's just multiple conversations before anything actually happens. And I like that process, really.
How does a traditional customer from a business protection point of view differ from a normal, what I would call retail customer?
So typically I've done a lot of personal sales before in the past, and I do get referrals of just friends and family that come through.
Yeah.
So it's a much quicker purpose. They want a life cover set up to cover their mortgage, don't want to discuss anything else on a personal side, and it could be done almost in one call sometimes. Whereas from the business protection side of things, you're really delving into a really in-depth fact find, I would find from it, and learning about them, their family, their business, income, outgoings, share value of a company. It's so many aspects of it all. And then from there, it just, multiple conversations going through, getting to know them, and then they learn about the products, I would say, is the best thing, because they just don't understand the risk, I would say, there of their business. And it's a real struggle for them, I think, of knowing where to go, because everyone's looked online, completely confused themselves, and then they want to speak to an advisor.
You almost don't know what you don't know, do you?
Yeah,
The business owners, they don't realise until they speak to someone. So then I guess it's no surprise, and it takes them a while to get their head around and then actually think about where they want to take that. And but what we find, some advisors focus on the tax efficiencies and those. So do you find actually you need to take more time looking at that person rather than just some of the benefits of these policies and what they can have?
Yeah, I think the easiest hook for a client is, what can I put through my business?
Mm-hmm.
I want to be tax efficient. I don't want to pay for this personally, which is typically your relevant life cover, is the easiest hook because it's the cheapest. Everyone wants life cover in some way or form, depending on the size of the policy. And then from there, the conversation, the trust is built up, and then it just flows into what else do you do kind of conversations. And then that's when they start opening up about way more about their business, partners. If it's a single business, just them as a contractor, they'll go into in-depth of what their outgoings are and everything. And then you start discussing executive income protections and things like that. So it just keeps spiraling, I think. And I think it's just breaking that barrier in the first instance to learn the trust of the client, and then it just free flows from there.
Yeah, nice. Because I guess that's the thing, it's getting that initial conversation to happen. Where do you start with business owners then? How do you actually get through the door to speak to them?
Well, quite a lot of my clients I get from LinkedIn, just doing random posts, typically about my dog. I absolutely love seeing a picture of my Great Dane and just, I've got a dog, and how big is he? And discuss the weight of him, and he comes through, and it's a real personal way of doing it more than business, because I did focus way too much on business, and it gets a bit boring, I think, reading the same thing over and over again. But then I would say about 50% of my clients, at least now, are introduced based from accountants.
Mm.
Mainly accountants. There's mortgage advisors that don't do protection as well, refer my way. But a lot of it is accountant based. So they'll just refer all their clients when they've done their end of year, see they're either paying for stuff personally or they've had a discussion in the end of year and say, there's someone that I think you could have a conversation with because I see a risk here for you and your family and your company.
So in terms of relationships then, how did you build those up with those accountants that refer to you? How did you go about doing that?
In the first instance, it was really hard because you just seem like another salesperson looking to rob their customers, as it were, kind of, and just delve into their book. A lot of it was just getting to know people via LinkedIn and just having conversations with them and just being like really open. I'm not here to steal your clients. I'm just here to see if this is a service that you want to offer your clients. I'm not here to try and make money. I'm not here to reach out and try and steal your clients for another accountant. It is just to help you. And then typically it would go along the lines of, I'd have a conversation with the accountant. They'd discuss the cover they wanted to see the process which I went through. And then it was like, if they felt comfortable, then the conversation went really free flowing. And then they would just be like, oh, can you send me over some marketing stuff I can send on a newsletter to my clients? And then just come through.
It's almost like a test case, really,
Yeah.
getting them involved in the process.
To see if they liked me, I think, is
of
more
course.
than anything, because some haven't. Some have just like, oh, it just doesn't suit my model. And that's fine. You can't help everybody, but it's 90% of the people I speak to is just, it's great. They just want their clients to be happy.
So from what you're talking about there, it was twofold. It was firstly building the relationship, which great, that's what you were doing. But secondly, there was the education piece going on. So in terms of that, for anyone looking to get into business protection and build up referrals and all that type of thing, how important is that education piece with introducers like accountants and others as well?
I think that's more important than anything because the accountants don't understand the covers either.
Right.
They understand the tax efficiency of certain things,
Yep.
but they didn't even know that you could put some of these policies through their companies. So then they're almost like they really want it quick. And then they just see it as another great thing to offer their clients because then it's another service for retention for their clients of keeping them. Because if they can say, I'll speak to this person, they'll be able to save you tax on the cover you're already paying for. Great. Why would they ever leave their accountant? Kind of. So I think the education of the accountant is good. As much as they don't give that advice, it's good for them to fully understand it and then give bits of information over to the client.
It's part of their proposition, isn't it?
To get them interested, really, and then say, yeah, I will have that conversation.
Yeah, they can offer it as part of their proposition and say, look, there's an extra thing to bring in, like you say, retention, making sure that people are trusted and built into their businesses and all that type of thing that they can offer. Do you have any other types of professions that introduce you to you as well?
Like I said, there's a few mortgage advisors that just don't
Right.
like doing protection.
Yep.
There's a few wealth managers that have got pension advisors.
Yep.
They do, but it tends to be because they're much older clients. They're not really that interested in the cover, or unless it's for inheritance tax purposes. But then it tends to be on the personal side of things a little bit. But most of it is accountants that I speak to. I'll probably say 85% of my introducers are accountants or business management advisors, really for cash flowing and things like that. But yeah, I kind of tested that when I was full-time employed to see how good it would be, and then knew that it did work, got a good steady flow of clients, and then I just took that to myself.
It's interesting.
Into my own company.
It's brilliant. It's interesting because in some of the webinars that we run, training on business protection, we always say that, try and get in with the accountants and solicitors. And that is some of the feedback we get from advisors is, well, they don't understand it either.
No.
So they'll go off and start approaching these accountants and solicitors and then find they've not actually heard. So it's great to hear even from you, you've got a wealth of experience that you've found the same, but you've overcome it and been patient with that.
Yeah, and I think it's taken a long time to do that because it is breaking that barrier down of speaking to a company, learning, getting their trust, really gaining it. And then from there, it is, that is value I can add to my clients, because it is really tough, I think, to not seem like just you're trying to sell to people.
Yeah.
It is actually a service you're offering that does benefit them and their clients. So it's a win-win for all. But it is just that initial, it's quite tough to get past.
Yeah, I bet. And we have had advisors say to us, well, what's the benefit to the accountant? So it's great to hear as well, you saying, well, it actually improves the accountant's retention because they've then got clients that they're offering a full service to and that can keep coming back, and they've added true value even further than just doing the accounting job. So
anything they can offer as free, I find, is why would that client leave? because they probably haven't heard of that from their previous accountant or the ones before that, because typically people hop and change every 2-3 years because they get a slightly cheaper price. But why would someone want to save £10 a month when they're getting great advice of insurance, mortgage, everything really? So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And when we are looking at like business protection, you've mentioned relevant life plans. Sometimes got a nice way to start because most people want life cover. Is that tends to be do you have a set process on what products you introduce first, or how does that work when you're introducing yourself to a new client and the products that you offer?
Typically, when I send through to them, I say, look, this is the most common products that I'll discuss with the client. So it will be like your relevant lives, executive income protection, shareholders, key man, business critical illnesses, things like that, as just a broad spectrum of everything that I discuss on a day-to-day basis. And then I think then it gives enough interest for them to say, oh, 2 out of those 7 that you've just discussed is great for me. And it goes from there. But I used to focus on relevant life a lot because it is the one that nearly every single person ends up taking. And it's the cheapest. So it's the most attractive to everybody. And it's the easiest one to discuss, I would say, because it's the simplest policy out there. It's just life cover.
Yeah.
Typically, most people have got it anyway, but paying for it personally, which I find. And then they're just doing a straight switch because they haven't reviewed it for 10, 11 years before they had kids or a big mortgage. So, yeah.
I guess that's fairly similar to personal protection then, that most people have heard of life cover in general, but it's all those other intricate policies such as your critical illness cover, income protection. It's not familiar. So I guess that's a really nice introduction, starting with the product that a customer maybe understands a little bit
Yeah.
about to get them teed up. What when you're advising like your clients, do you find that it's quite common that they'll go for multiple policies and you get multiple sales in one go, or is it kind of that slow burner over time?
I typically find the 4 products which I'll discuss with nearly every single client, because they're just interested in what's out there, kind of, is your relevant life, executive income protection, critical illness, and private healthcare. They're the 4 key ones up front that people discuss. Then when you delve deeper into the fact find, it would be like, oh, there's another director in the company, shareholder, key person, things like that. But I speak to a lot of contractors. So it tends to be a one-man band running through their limited company, and they just want to replace the employee benefits they've missed out on for years. And now they're in a financial position to actually take it all. So I'd say most clients initially would leave with at least 2 in the first 2-3 conversations. They've had the quotes of all the other products, and then they don't want to overcommit instantly, see the cash flow and everything, and then come back 3-4 months later, take another product as well sometimes. But it's typically relevant life, executive income protection, and then the others are of interest, but not right now.
Okay, so when you're talking to your clients, and obviously RLP is a big focus there. How did you, when you first came into it, started doing it, how did you sort of prize yourself away from the relative comfort of RLP and talking about the other products with the customer? And the reason I ask that is it because a customer's fairly sort of willing to discuss those other options? Because I think sometimes in the personal space, we get into positions in certain quarters that customers only really want to do life, or maybe life and a bit of kick. So how did you do that? How did you move into those other areas? And how, I suppose, willing were they to discuss those?
I've always been a person that's discussed income protection for years, because I don't understand why you wouldn't have the conversation even if the client doesn't leave with it. As long as they understand it, they may come back. I've had clients come back 2-3 years later, email me saying, do you remember me? And then come back and just take it. I think it's a really important policy to discuss. And part of my fact find, you're discussing their outgoings, all their income, their kids, their wife, their husband, whoever I'm speaking to. So you're going into so much depth of a proper fact find. And if you do that, you start unearthing areas of risk. So it's just goes hand in hand to me. It's one thing that I've always discussed, always sold, even on a personal level. But it just makes even more sense on a business level because it is tax deductible again.
Yes.
So it is the no-brainer kind of thing.
So if I'm a successful advisor that's looking to go into business protection, you're discussing the basics with everyone, right? You're starting with the foundation of income protection, and then you're moving out from there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing around income protection is if an advisor thinks it's expensive, they don't discuss it. So you can't think it's expensive because that client may have had a friend that's had a payout for years from it and think, I don't care what the cost is. It's about the cover more than the cost. And you can't decide that for them. And if you don't have the conversation, you don't even know if they want it. And there's so many times I've worked in companies where they've sold a life cover and that's it. Then they've come back for like a customer services call straight after. And then they've found out that you do income protection and then taken a policy 3 months down the line, just didn't know you even did it because it was never even discussed in the fact find.
Just that belief element, isn't it? The belief cycle thing that we talk about, isn't it? In terms of making sure that you're keeping those, if they are held, those types of beliefs completely at bay and just having a blank piece of paper.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is as well as explaining to the client, I'm not trying to sell every single policy to you imaginable because I'm not here to spend all your money that you've got spare. It's just have a discussion around what policies work. If you feel that solves a problem you've got, should something happen, great, you take the policy and I'll help you set it up for the right levels and the right payout. Yeah.
And in terms of the admin side of it, how did you, when you first started in business protection and stuff, how did you sort of get through the intricacies of that? Was there anyone you went to support? Was there providers? Was there, someone you worked with, a mentor, anything like that?
No, not really. I've always spoke to BDMs anyway, and if there's any unique selling points an insurer would use, I want to know about them because then I can use them because if it works directly, it's going to clearly work for me. So there's a lot of information there, but I think it's because of how many years I've been in the industry now, it's kind of, they're all very similar. So it's just about having refresher conversations and getting to know the products. And if anything's changed, can you tell me about it instantly? So then it does get my mind going again, and then you can explain it better to a client. So yeah,
it sounds like you have some enthusiasm for when the new stuff comes along because it's something new to talk to your clients about.
Well, yeah, because it can be, for working for years and doing the same thing, discussing death and becoming ill, it can get a bit morbid. But at the same time as it is, just a refresher of everything. Having that conversation with the client and putting a light heart on it, really, it's not about just discussing you dying. So yeah, it's good.
I guess it's all that solutions-based planning, isn't it? So it's not just let's disturb them in case they die. It's thinking, well, if you want your business to be successful and tax efficient and all these things, you're really aiding them a lot, aren't you? It isn't even just always a morbid conversation. That's what I quite like about business protection. It actually can be quite a solutions-based, needs-based conversation rather than doom and gloom of all these things going wrong.
Nearly my whole fact find is based around their personal life. They don't tend to want to discuss. You go through all their absolute details of everything, taking their date of birth and their income and the turnover of their company. But then typically you find something in their personal life that they're very similar to me anyway. So it could be, I've noticed a post on social media that you do cycling. I ride my bike as well. How long have you done? And the conversation can go on for 45 minutes about riding your bike more than that. And then all of a sudden you've been speaking to them for an hour and a half.
It's the classic, isn't it? When the close down the laptop, don't let the fact find drive you type thing, and having a proper conversation to find out about them and build that relationship. Yeah,
it's not a tick box exercise kind of thing. You've got to do the fundamentals of everything that you want. After that, it's just a free flow and nice conversation with another human being.
Lovely. And taking it back to the accountants. So when you're talking to them and about the potential of business protection with their clients, do you need to use any stats or anything about the amount of people that haven't got it? And some of the stats that are out there at the moment, because they've got a big client book and there'll be a lot of clients there that won't have enough cover and may not even have any for the business. Do you have to do anything like that?
Not too much, no, because I tend to find with the business owner, they either want it or they don't. There's no kind of in between.
Okay.
Typically, like I said, a lot of my clients are contractors. So there'll be one person bands, a male or female, however they're running that. A lot of them IT professionals. So they've probably left a really high earning job, sort of 150 grand plus a year, gone solo, have no death in service, no sickness pay, nothing at all. They want it. They just don't know the price of it or how do they structure it and how do they set it up properly, because they've always been part of group schemes before and 7 times annual salary for death in service and things like that. So they just don't know where to start and they don't have the time. So they just want someone to do it all for them, really. And I think that's the biggest thing about speaking to me is they just think they don't know where to start. So they've always just put it on the back burner constantly because they know it's going to be a long conversation.
There's almost not enough of you, is there? Really?
No.
Because there must be so many out there that don't know what, as Hazel said, don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. And it's that time poor element, isn't it? Like when we do our business, kind of our research, state of the nation research, that comes out every single time we do it, as business owners are just so time poor.
Yeah.
So that's something that when we take a deep dive and, you know, show them the risk and go through all of that with them, they get it and they're like, I absolutely need to do something.
But I don't have the time.
But I don't have time to do it, and I need a
haven't got 10
professional.
minutes, yeah.
And unlike personal protection, when we do some research, people are like, oh, well, I can go on comparison websites, or I've got this advisor or that advisor. The one thing that we find every year in that research is business owners want a professional.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant. It's like you need to be cloned.
Yeah, well, I'm not
There's
perfect.
an idea.
I'm not perfect by any means, but it is. Yeah, is they don't want to mess up or make it worse for their company when it's already profitable. They're really happy with how it's going. They just want it to be that little bit better, and that's it. It's the tiny changes, but they don't want to mess it up. Don't want to have that conversation with their accountant next year, where all of a sudden they've just cost themselves £10,000 in something they've put through the company that isn't tax deductible, and because they went online to try and save a few pence. And most of my clients, they're not looking to save money. They don't really care about the cost. It's all about the cover, because they're all quite high earners. So it's all about the cover if the worst happened. And
thinking about that, like if the worst happened, does COVID ever come into your conversations? Like, have you ever seen business owners had to have any expenditure on sick pay or anything like that, or not so much, really?
About a year or two ago, yes. A lot. Well, nearly every inquiry I ever had was, I want to take income protection. Nearly every single, and it went through the roof, my inquiries. However, people didn't understand what income protection was. They're like, I've just been laid off, or I'm fearful I'm going to be laid off. Can I take some cover to cover that? And it's like, that's not what income protection is about. And so I think for the last, closer to when it first started, like end of 2020, early 2021, we had a lot of conversations around it. People were panicking, and they were just almost like wanting to take any cover, but then realizing actually what the cover they wanted on a personal basis was a bit too expensive for their budget. When they're panicking, they may not even have any income coming up soon. So it's that catch-22 if they want it, but they can't afford it kind of thing. But not so much now. I don't think anyone's really mentioning it to me. They may mention when I'm doing the medical questions, oh, I had COVID 2 years ago, but nothing much about it since.
Do you think they're more appreciative of the need now since we've all been through COVID?
Yeah, I think people understand if there's no income there, the impact is a lot bigger.
Yeah.
So I don't feel it's as much of I have to convince someone. As much as with business, you don't need to typically. They're quite happy with the expense of it. It's a much quicker decision, whereas before people might take a month to decide, because it could be £200 a month just for that policy, and then £400 a month combined for everything kind of thing. So it can get quite costly. Whereas now I think people have seen, they've been out of work for a year, being a contractor or a company owner. They've just, all of a sudden there's 200 grand less a year coming into the company, and it could have closed them.
That's an interesting point, just around the cost and the tax efficiency. Do you have to work closely with the client to sort of articulate the true efficiency and reduce cost in putting it through the business, or do the clients just get it conceptually and think, oh, okay, fine, I'm going to make a saving on it?
I think with the income protection more so, they'll want to have a conversation with their accountant, which typically they're my introducer anyway already.
Yeah, of course.
If they're not, I want to be speaking to their accountant. And they'll discuss what's best for them, because the payout goes to the company coming out of the company. It's what works for them and how much their income is. But I've got a good understanding now, having lots of conversations with the accountants based on what people pay themselves. So I know kind of the brackets of, is it beneficial for them? The more they pay themselves, the better it is for them. If someone's really paying a minimum salary and no dividends, kind of, it probably isn't going to benefit them, because you're not going to qualify for barely any cover. So yeah, I think it definitely works better that way, working with the accountant.
Yeah.
Because they will discuss the intricacies of all their outgoings.
And you're covering everything, because you mentioned about that importance of the fact find, first the building of the relationship, talking about all the personal life, all that type of thing, common ground and things. You're covering all these different areas. You must find out what they're doing or people aren't doing in other areas. Pensions, for example. I'm thinking consumer duty now, we're post-implementation. on new and existing products? You must be scenarios where a client could be putting more in the pension or whatever. What happens there? Does that go back to the accountant? Do they talk to them? Do they refer off elsewhere? How does that work?
It's typical, I'll say to them, once you know all their outgoings and everything, a lot of the clients I speak to are kind of early 40-year-olds. I would say roughly it seems to be the time in your life where you mature. You've had kids, you realise you need to put things in place kind of, and the money's less irrelevant than it is earlier in life. But yeah, they're realising they need a will. They need to start paying out their company into a pension. And then normally when they're discussing that, because it's quite large sums going into a pension, they'll want to speak to their accountant of what should I allocate to protection to my pension because I wanted to put that amount into my pension and so on and so forth. So it is, you're almost budget planning for people, but they do it with their accountant. You're just planting the seed for them to make the decision. And
you're linking it to their goals as well, aren't you? Because ultimately you'll be having conversations about what do you want to do with this business? What's your exit strategy in years to come? So you protecting all of those elements now, income, all that type of thing, is protecting that, galvanizing that, if you like.
Yeah. And if they're having a conversation around that, they're in the right frame of mind, I think, to have that discussion around protection because they are caring about the future. And it just makes it so much easier when they're wanting to put a pension in place, when they're wanting to protect if something did happen, small or big, whichever way that were to be. And it then is just a free-flowing conversation, like I said, rather than trying to sell products. The product's irrelevant almost. It is, if the worst happened, that's the scenario I want paying out. I want that £1 million, £2 million payout to my wife or husband because I earn 200 grand a year and I know they need that as a minimum. Whereas sometimes you'd start a fact find and be like, oh, I just want my mortgage covered. Even as a company owner, want 250 grand's worth of cover. And then when you start discussing it, they realise actually the risk is way higher because I'm the sole earner. So then the business goes kaput once you're gone. So it's quite interesting conversations all the time.
Yeah, that's what we found as well, doing the research really similarly. It's brilliant hearing it being brought to life in like a real kind of advice scenario, because we found that when, interviewing the business owners, initially they were a bit like, oh, I don't have many risks. It's, like you said, it's just a debt or it's just a mortgage. And then actually we started looking at, well, what if we removed this key person, or what if this key person got taken away? And I think about 70% of business owners told us they'd cease to trade in 2 years.
Yeah,
if the key person was
as
gone.
That, even like a lot of them are a lot sooner than that, kind of, because it's if they're very specialist, it could be months before they're done because they couldn't even get a contractor in as a locum to cover the job that person's learned over the last 10 years sometimes, and it's irrespective of the money, they can't even get someone for that. So it really would just dissolve a company very quickly.
Well, they say there's such a shortage anyway. If you talk about IT, for example, there's such a shortage there, and then you're talking about specialisms as well.
Yeah, when it gets really specialist, it could go from the person they're paying currently as 150 grand a year, it might cost them 600 grand a year, or the pro rata to get someone in quickly for a 3-month contract. The day rates could be £2,000-3,000 a day because it's very specialist, especially in the medical side of industry. And it's like, it would ruin any company. You can't even afford, they'd struggle to even pay for a few months of that, let alone a couple of years. So,
and have many business owners thought about that until you address it with them?
None. Literally, they don't ever think about, they think about their personal side, their family and everything like that, but they just think the business will just go on forever. And then when you discuss about it, typically it's like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that actually. And they don't, I don't think a lot of them understand a shareholder protection. I don't think they understand half of your company, if there's 2 directors, goes to a surviving partner and they can do what they want in that company at that point. So it is that you might not want that person coming into the company and having a say in what the day-to-day runnings of it. So it is buy them out as quick as possible. And it's quite shocking that they've never thought about it, and especially for well-established companies as well.
And when they put money into the business, like directors' loan accounts and stuff like that, I bet that there's a lot of lack of knowledge, I would have thought, around those types of things.
Yeah. They just don't think about it because they're not thinking something bad's going to happen. Right. So I don't even think that's entered their head until, I would say, they know another business where they've had a problem. And then the conversation is very apparent. I want shareholder protection. If they even mention shareholder protection or key person, I know they've known someone that's had a problem with it in the past because it doesn't typically come up, or they've never even heard that is even a protection option. So I think it's quite a hard policy to get out there, I think, to people. because they don't understand the actual way it pays out, what it covers, why you take it. And that's quite hard to get across. Whereas in a conversation with an advisor, it can be quite easy, actually. And especially if you refer it to the accountant, say to them, that's your outgoings, that's what it is. They'll verify everything I'm saying. You need to do something about it.
Do you think that's the beauty of it in a way, though, isn't it? The fact they don't necessarily understand it. So there comes, into yourself, the expert, to be able to explain it properly and show to them exactly this is the solution to a problem that you hadn't actually thought about and hadn't considered, or albeit probably not consciously not considered, just gone along through life being busy and
ignoring
it. Not realizing, not head in the sand, but just not realizing, and then suddenly you come along.
Yeah, because they're so focused on everything else, growing the company, getting new clients in, that's their focus. Why would they focus on the downside of everything? So it is just that realization that thank you for bringing it up, kind of, and then it gets them thinking about so many more other things, and then they'll sometimes bring a risk assessor into the company to work out what areas are they at risk, which then just solidifies what I'm discussing really with them, and it makes my job even easier. So
yeah, because you look at, when you're a business owner, you're looking at risks in different areas, particularly, I know from some of the IT professionals you were speaking, may not relevant to them, but someone who's got business premises, you do a risk assessment for fire, wouldn't you? You do all these different things. You're just doing the same thing.
Just not for the cash flow, really. They don't even think about, because it is going along swimmingly well and it's growing and growing and growing. You're never thinking it's going anywhere. You think it's going to carry on forever, but unfortunately with key people, can go in an instant. So, and until you have that discussion, and no one ever comes through for that product, I would say. Like you said, it comes through for relevant life cover. Really simple. Most people who look at that, especially off my website and things like that, they'll say, oh, that's the tax efficient one, I want it. And then you have that conversation, it just keeps spiraling. It's almost like they could leave 6, 7, 8 products sometimes from multiple people. So and they're the long conversations, which I like. That's the interesting bit of what I do. Really, I like doing that.
It's funny, the awareness piece, because even like, I think I was saying this to some advisors last week. My other half set up a business in March, and he's got a business partner. And I said to him, I was like, you need to think about, this, your protection, like shareholder protection. So he went away, and I only explained it briefly to him to let him go and process things. And he came back, and we were walking the dog, and he says, right, so I just thought, well, my business partner's wife will get his share, and you can take over it if I pass away. And I was like, hang on a minute, I don't have time to be running your business and do my full-time job. I was like, no, you need to rethink this. So it is quite amazing that even when business owners' minds start working, that always is their default, isn't it? It's like, oh, my family will take over, and
just take over
it's like, without sort of, how does the business partner feel, but how does the family feel? Like, what would they want to happen? So
as much as they want the income of it, they might not. They might even have an interest or the skill set to even do it. So, what would they do if they got left it? They can't do anything about it. So it's everyone looks for the easy option.
Definitely. And do you ever look at like the shareholder agreements or anything, or do you never have to tend to get that detailed? Do you ever look at like the partnership agreements, what's stored in company's house, or do you tend to find the information quite willingly coming from the business owner in the first place?
They'll just tell you it as soon as that barrier is broken down. They'll start unleashing everything about their life to you. It's literally like the notes you can make are unbelievable. And that's why I said the conversation can go from a half-hour conversation to a 2-hour fact find all of a sudden, because it just gets their mind thinking, and then they just start dropping everything on you. And then it starts triggering their mind about other things as well. So it is, they're just unloading on you from that point. And they're very willing to tell you everything because they know you're there to help them, rather than look to sell them to them. So you're actually trying to advise correctly, and they know if they tell you everything, you can do it properly. So
you must look forward so much to speaking to every client, because what I'm feeling is you're learning so much, particularly about the industries that these people are working in.
Yeah, that's the best bit about it, is as much as you're discussing the same products constantly, predominantly 90% of it's the same products to most clients. It's that one that is completely different. And everyone works in a different industry as well. Even though I speak to a lot of IT consultants, they all work in different industries, in different parts of the country, short-term contracts, long-term contracts. So it chops and changes all the time. And that's what I like about business protection more. The variety of conversations is completely different to personal, because personal is always focused around family, mortgage. whereas this just can go off on any tangent whatsoever for anything. So yeah, it kind of weirdly excites me to have these conversations.
You can tell though it's a lovely passion. Like, you make me want to go and look at business protection in more detail. And obviously you've been doing it, was it 4.5 years? 4.5 years, Hend Consulting. Yeah. And how have you found setting up yourself? Was there any kind of main challenges, or, anything that you'd reflect on from that 4.5 years?
Thinking of pandemic in the start of it was a tough one. But other than that, it was learn what you want to do before you start it. Because I think a lot of people rush into it, just say, I want to earn all that money. Instead, I can see that the company I'm working for earns all that. That should be easy. And there's so much more to it running your own company, even just as me on my own. There's so many more things into it, into your consumer duties, your due diligence, the registration data, all the FCA requirements, all these things, PI covers. There's so many more things you have to think about quarterly, monthly than you did before. It's not just about income at that point. And I think a lot of it is speak to other business owners before you start, because they'll tell you where they made their mistakes.
I was just about to ask whether you would say that.
I made many mistakes when I started. It wasn't even like, I've learned over the years of, don't put money into lots of advertising early, just grow it organically is better for me, because I've seen a lot of people set up alone within a year gone, because they've just put so much funding into pay-per-click advertising, things like that. It's just, it takes ages for that to get good. And you've just dumped 40, 50,000 pounds into advertising, which has gone nowhere. So it's go slow. Don't over-invest in too many areas. Just focus on one. Speak to other business owners, and everyone's willing to help. Which when I first started, I was like, no one's going to want to give me their secrets of how they started it, but they are. They're really happy to actually share, because there's plenty of clients out there for everybody. More than enough. You could have 10 times more advisors out there. There'd still be enough clients for everybody.
And thanks for sharing that, because that's why we started this podcast, wasn't it? And having people like yourself that are willing to share what they do. And there is sometimes a default that thinking, the successful people aren't going to do it. But, you're an example of that. And so are all the others that have come on. It's just great.
Yeah, and it's not a competition. That's what I think. Obviously, everyone wants every single client. But when you've done it long enough, you do realise that there's so many clients out there, and it chops and changes all the time. So you might lose a client 5-6 years down the line because they've closed a business, but then they've referred someone to come back to you anyway. So it's, if you've done a good job, they will come back to you anyway. You don't have to fight for it.
I guess you always want the clients that match what you're about, don't you? Everyone's got their own personal brand, and we've seen it on the podcast before. Some people have told us that they want to work with clients who they get on with. And obviously you're not going to be best friends with every client you have, but you have to have a level of, I get on with this person, or they trust me and I trust them. And that's not going to, everybody kind of merges differently with other people, don't they? And that's the beauty of our industry, is we can all be ourselves, but still get the ideal clients in, and share that learning, and still enough to go around.
Yeah, and I think that was what I learned the most over trying to get new clients. It isn't cold calling people constantly and begging them for their business almost, because that's practically what you're doing. You're trying to sell yourself as hard as possible to get a new client. It is just be you, and that will attract people naturally anyway. I get more clients from talking about my personal life than I do about business. You've got to sling bits in their business as well to try to trigger their memory and trigger their mind actually thinking, I do need to sort that. But me talking about going for a wild camp would get someone, because they're like, I want to get into that. And you're inspiring them to do it sometimes. And then it's just, you've gone past that trust barrier. And then they're happily to just open up to everything to you. So it's personal side of my life helps get clients. So it took me a long time to realize that instead of just ramming business down people's throats.
It's just, it sounds so simple. And obviously it isn't, because obviously it takes time.
Yeah.
Just talking about, getting those relationships going and stuff. Did you do networking events and things like that type of stuff when you first started out, or not?
I did a few, and I felt that it was just full of salespeople trying to sell to people, which really put me off. And in Bournemouth, where I'm from, there's a lot of people there that are brokerages, a lot of people that have come from brokerages, a lot of people that are setting up solo, and they go to these networking events solely to sell, not to actually get relationships with other companies around, or just almost get like a phone book of people they can refer clients to if they need to. So there's a few wasted times there, but you learn very quickly of what suits you and what doesn't. But then there's others that I've been to that I don't even discuss what I do. You just go there and you're open to conversations. Like I went to Accountex this year. I'm not an accountant. I've no relevance there whatsoever of even being in the building. But at the same time, from me going there, lots of accountants knew then who I was. They've seen me on LinkedIn, never ever at any point even interacted with me. But because they saw me in person, it kind of matched what I was putting online, they felt. And then they wanted to be an introducer. So that was my way of networking and kind of thinking, do I need to put a stand at that sort of place? Because I think that works better than just going for a quick lunch here and there with people, because it's an hour where you just see people doing their rounds constantly of like, I want to sell to you, I can't to you next, and you work anyway. But it made me learn more about other people's businesses and their
What
approach.
you didn't want to be.
What I didn't want to do and what I did want to do, because there was some great people in it as well, but 90% of people are there to sell. So it's quite tough actually to go there and just have a free-flowing conversation.
Sometimes you learn more, don't you, from from the examples you don't want. So it's
Yeah.
still valuable, isn't it? You kind of think, well, you can watch people in that room and you think, well, I want to make sure that's not me, or actually I really like that part. I'll take that little bit away. So there's always, what I like about what you're saying is you've taken a little bit from everything you've tried.
Yeah,
and put it positively.
I'll try lots of things of just to see what does work and what doesn't, especially if they're cost-free kind of thing. Just try it. Look, there's no harm in trying it. And if anything, yeah, you do learn from your mistakes more than the actual really good things that happen to you. So you think, I don't ever want to go down that path again. Where's my next avenue that I'm going to go down? And you start refining it until you get down the perfect route for you that suits you, your personality, and your business.
And your marketing strategy really is a mixture of you face to face, like you say, going to these types of events, but it's backed up by that social media presence, the LinkedIn presence. So how often are you posting on LinkedIn? Just your general stuff around personal.
A lot. It's, if anything, when I first started, I've never had any coach or anybody that I speak to, but you can very clearly see who's being coached by what they kind of do. So if you just keep an eye on people, you can learn off what they're doing and what works and what posts of theirs are actually being successful. And it is typically keep it personal, keep it true to who you are. And then I just keep doing it. So most of the time, if I've got time, it would be every day, sometimes twice a day. But a lot of about I found is just interacting with people on there more than your actual post yourself.
Okay.
Because just interacting with people is like me going around the country having conversations with these people who are just doing it virtually. And that's the whole gaining trust thing again. So it is just making sure you even exist.
It's like that little soft reminder, isn't it, that you're still here to help.
And just showing up.
Yeah.
So if you don't post, you don't comment, you don't like on someone else's, no one even knows you exist.
That top of mind piece, isn't it? Which was so much more difficult before social media, but with that coming around
makes
now,
it so much easier.
Someone could just see you've liked them. Oh yeah, I need to go and speak to them about my business protection, or I meant to talk about the income protection side, or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's so simple as that. It is just being out there, because eventually someone has seen enough of your posts. In your little hook line, it would say about helping business owners protect themselves, and it would literally be that they see at the right time when they're actually thinking about or have that week, and then they just drop you a message. Okay? It's just about being consistent, really consistent. And I'm not brilliant at it, but I'm a lot better now than when I was a few years ago. So
well, you've managed to go for 4.5 years with Hend Consultants. You can't be too bad
at
networking and going ahead. So it sounds like obviously you've had a really successful 4.5 years setting up, and you've given us so much insight into what's aided that success. If you were to summarize like one tip to give to other advisors, which would you say is like that golden best piece of advice that you could give?
Stop making assumptions on what the client wants before even asking them. So I think people are stuck in a one-track mind of everyone wants these kind of products. Just be completely open. Let them tell you what they want, and don't be forceful, because they will open up to you big time. And they've come to you just for a life policy, they'll probably leave with a lot more, and they wanted a lot more. They just didn't want to open up in the first instance. So don't assume anything.
Love it. Thank
Amazing.
you very much.
Wow. Another great episode. Thanks so much. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So many
definitely
views.
low.
Glad to
Yeah,
come.
lots that we can take from that. Thank you so much,
I do
Nathan.
love to chat.
That helps.
Yeah.